Hello, I'm Harry Riley. Welcome to Harry's Tales. Someone asked me why I like to write ghost stories. Well, I'm Irish on my mother's side, and the romantic Irish like their ghosts, so I suppose that's where it comes from. This is called The Riddle of the Red Telephone Box, a ghost story by Harry Riley. This story is fiction, and resemblance to anyone, living or dead, is coincidental. She wanted something else to fill a gap on a bare wall. Everything else had been sorted. They'd moved into their new house, and things were ticking along nicely. They were pleased with most of their new purchases, and the house now had that comfortable, homely feeling. You know, like you could just settle down and relax for the night. Howard Spencer and his wife Sonia had been married for just over a month, and were getting on like a house on fire. It was so natural to see them living together, you'd have thought they were an old married couple. And then Sonia had this thing about wanting a picture. Not just any old picture. A common or garden print wouldn't do. It had to be a genuine painting. Well framed, and she wanted a landscape, possibly a village scene. Howard agreed, and was sitting at home in his comfy recliner by the fire after a hard day at the office when he spotted something in their local newspaper. Guy Ferguson, that well-known artist, was holding an exhibition of his work at the Old Exchange Gallery on Weekday Cross, Saturday week, and all paintings were to be marked up for sale. He specialised in landscapes of the Derbyshire Dales, and Howard felt sure Sonia and he would see something to their liking at the show. The appointed day arrived, and filled with anticipation the young couple entered the crowded gallery. There were several possibilities, and then Sonia lingered over a little painting of a hamlet or village, just a few cottages and an old mill on a country lane, surrounded by green fields and with blue-grey hills in the distance. There were dark storm clouds gathered above, adding a sense of drama to the otherwise idyllic scene. Guy Ferguson observed her interest and sauntered up alongside her. "This is very nice. Is it a real subject or something you just conjured up from imagination?" she asked. Guy was happy to oblige and answered her question with one of his own. "Do you know the Peak District at all, miss?" "Yes," Sonia replied, not bothering to correct him of her true marital status. The artist smiled and continued, "Believe it or not, but that one took me an awful long time to get just right. I laboured long and hard and almost gave up. What you see there is my third attempt, and I was all ready to pack up and admit defeat. I found a suitable position to set up my easel in the village of Aswith on Derwent in the lower Dow Valley. There, see that bit of low stone wall in the foreground, by the long grass? I was standing slightly to the left of that in the field. But the thing which gave me the most trouble was that old red public phone box." Guy saw he had Sonia's attention and knew his little intervention would produce a sale. "No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the proportions quite right, and then it clicked, and here is the result. I took a little licence by adding a few sheep as another point of interest. Anyway, I hadn't noticed this old guy looking over my shoulder until he spoke up and said I should remove the phone box as it was haunted. I laughed at his serious expression and said no way, and continued my work. And then when I turned round again, he'd gone. Howard came over to see what had so captured Sonia's attention, and she asked him if they could buy the painting. He liked it too. A price was agreed, and with the painting and Guy Ferguson's business card for future reference, they departed. The Spencers were at home the following week when their phone rang, at 10 o'clock in the evening. Sonia answered, puzzled by such a late-night call, and her face turned white as she clumsily dropped the phone back on its cradle. It was a woman's voice in deep distress. She was pleading for help and said a stranger was following her. She was sure he meant her harm. "Did he say did she say where she was?" asked Howard. "No, she screamed twice and could hear sounds of a scuffle. I could hear sounds of a scuffle, and then the line went dead." Howard picked up the phone and tried the recall number, and then shook his head and rang the police. "They'll check with British Telecom and see if they can trace the call." They heard nothing more until 10 o'clock the next night, and the phone rang again right on the button. Howard was first this time and listened intently before shakily replacing the handset. It was a woman and she needed help. She screamed and the line was cut. Needless to say, they were both on tenterhooks as 10 o'clock the following evening drew close. And later, Sonia couldn't explain why her eyes had been drawn to the new painting now hanging on their living room wall, but she stood up and walked slowly towards it as if in a trance. There, see the red phone box in the picture? Somebody's inside it. They both jumped simultaneously as the phone rang again. Neither had the courage to pick it up until Howard grabbed it and shouted back, "Please tell me what you want. I've rung the police. If this is some stupid hoax call..." The strange calls persisted each night after that, and each time the painting's phone box held a figure. Afterwards the red phone box was empty again. Guy Ferguson could offer no explanation when they spoke to him. The police were still puzzled and said it was probably some malicious nutter with too much time on her hands. So they contacted the phone company and changed the telephone number. This would stop the pestering calls that were driving them crazy. It had no effect, and so the calls continued, and Howard decided to drive to Aswith village and try to find out if the red phone box had been removed. As obsolete like so many others, he was suspicious of the artists making fools of them. The phone box was nowhere to be seen. He popped into the post office and said he was surprised they still had a post office, and asked the old woman behind the counter if they'd ever had a red phone box in the village. She shook her head and said, "Bless you, yes, sir. But it was removed after that dreadful time when the young village girl went missing. They never found her, and the last time anybody saw her, she was making a call from the public phone box. People hereabouts said the box was haunted, and nobody would use it after that. It got vandalised and was removed. We never got a replacement." Howard thanked the old lady and was just leaving when Sonia rang his mobile phone to say there was something odd about the painting. The phone box was empty, but a figure was now standing outside the door of the old mill in the picture. Howard walked back down the street and saw the mill now was up for sale. It looked derelict, and he was able to force the door open quite easily. Once his eyes had adjusted to the darkness, he realised a lot of light was coming in through cracks in the roof and the missing mortar. The place was a run for the rats, and he stumbled, tripping over some fallen masonry. As he picked himself up, he found he was inadvertently clutching several broken twigs. He took them to the doorway, only to discover the twigs were in fact the dry bones of a human hand. End.